first in a series looking at pre-war classic cars, focusing on the Austin 7 motor car. However, all classic cars are important as part of my series, and it's about preserving the history of those. Hence why today you see me driving in my 1970s Volkswagen Beetle.
Ain't gonna start it one no more, ain't gonna start it one no more. I ain't gonna start it one no more, no more. Now by the riverside, gonna lay down my soul to chill. Ain't gonna start it one no more.
According to the Austin 7 Association Register, there are 11,179 cars currently on the roads in the world today. And the problem facing the current generation or owners of these cars is that they are more than likely, the cars are going to outlive the owners. So the problem that we're facing is that we need to encourage younger generations to take up guardianship of these cars, and that's what this series is all about.
Hello, my name is Bob Wilkinson. I want to talk to you about some of my collection of cars today.
I met with Bob Wilkinson, manager of the Classic Car Loan Scheme that gives young drivers an opportunity to loan a classic car that has been donated by its owner for 1 year.
The problem we face is getting young people in, which is why one of the reasons I've been involved in different projects here at the British Motor Museum, a project called Classic Virgins, where you bring new people into it, and Living with Your Classic, designed to give some hands-on experience for people who've recently bought a classic. But the big problem facing not just Austin 7 owners, but the classic cars these days are more expensive than they were sort of 5-6 years ago. But even so, there are many cars that are relatively affordable. About 2-3 years ago, 80% of classic cars going through auctions were sold for under £10,000. And of course, you've got to put the classic car alongside other priorities in your life. Do we get a new bathroom? Do we have a new kitchen? Or do we have a classic car? One thing I've looked at is on my classic loan project, that if a young person or a family have been involved in the classic car movement and enjoyed it, and that's the key, enjoying it, then in a few years' time, they're more likely to think, hey, we've got some money. Is it the bathroom? Is it the kitchen? Or is it the classic car?
Do that, look. Okay? You ready to drive?
Uh-huh.
Where are we going then?
To school.
Going to school?
Uh-huh.
That will be cool.
What's this do?
That's the handbrake to stop the car rolling forward.
What's this one?
That's for changing gear.
What's the tails do?
That's the one in the middle, that's brakes.
What's that one?
That's the one for clutch, that's for changing gear with this. And then you've got the one on the right, that little one. That's for making it go fast. How cool is that?
And at least the classic car has a chance. Just as an example, the Classic Car Loan project has been now running 3 years. And one of the participants last year, a young lady who had the Ford Model A, based on her experience of real enjoyment with the car, has gone out and bought her own little 1930s early Morris Minor. But I'm quite sure that that's what will happen. It's more likely to happen that they may buy a car if they've had a positive, enjoyable experience involving family and friends. It started with, actually, on the showground just out here about 4 years ago, when a friend of mine who had a Ford Model A, he's has several cars, and he approached me and asked if I could find a young person who might be interested in having his car for the year on loan as an experience. And for once, for a few seconds, I was speechless. And I said, yeah, I'm sure we can. And we looked into all aspects of an agreement, insurance, and all those things. As an owner, you'd want to be in place if you were putting your car up for a younger person. And of course, we have to safeguard the interests of the young person borrowing it, because they don't want to have a pile of rubbish put on them, do they? And I was delighted when a well-known company, Peter James Insurance, took up the baton and said from day one, yes, we can do this. So we've got all aspects covered. How do people get into it? Well, you can look at the website, all the W's, classiccarloanproject.co.uk. Have a look on there. You can apply direct to me at any time. And on there, there's a list of cars available. You'll be asked to fill in an application form, and then we have a selection process which involves myself and the car owner, who has the last word, shortlisting and so on. And then we move to a handover day here at the British Motor Museum, where we don't just hand over the car and say, bye-bye, off you go. No, they have an opportunity to drive the car in a private area, to become familiar with the controls, with the owner involved. They have all the technical literature there as well. We keep in constant support and touch through the year, and that's a vital element.
Bob said that in the short time that the scheme has been running, we have reached a growing number of budding enthusiasts. Their stories published all over our websites to read and enjoy. He is proud to have had this opportunity to work with so many enthusiastic young drivers, and he looks forward to seeing more becoming involved in the project. Eddie Storer is one of the lucky people who applied for and successfully loaned an Austin 7 for a year as part of the Classic Car Loan scheme. Eddie got the little Austin back home in Lincolnshire after first getting keys at the British Motor Museum. He says, "I took some pals out to the local village for a takeaway. I'm impressed by the way this sturdy little car performs. I think modern life leans too heavily on convenience, and a number of issues make classic car ownership appear unfeasible for most people. I don't think finances will allow outright purchases of another car. However, I certainly would be tempted to sell one of my others for one. I loved every mile in this car. And I do actually love the attention it gets too. It sort of forced me to make time for all those events and shows which I always miss year on year and have always thought about going to, but never actually made it." I met with Mike Costigan, editor of the Global Austin 7 Clubs Association magazine, to find out his views.
I think the biggest problem is the younger generation have no experience of them. And I don't use my car a lot, but I do try and make sure that I go out in it at least once a week, go to the local shops, park in the supermarket car park or whatever, because there's always a group of people around it when you come back. You can engage them in conversations. If there are young children there, get them to sit in the car and experience it. And just seeing a car there, they'll say, "Oh, isn't that cute, isn't it sweet," all the rest of it. But they really have no comprehension of what it's like. I think it would be about 3 years ago. I was involved in one of the internet forums, and there was a young man on there. He was a photographic student, and he announced that he was going to have this project for the year, that he was going to feature an old car for each month of the year. And he'd already done, I think, 2 or 3 months with a Volkswagen Beetle and a Ford Escort or something like that. And he was asking for more volunteers, more cars. And I contacted him and I said, "Well, this is totally out of context with the other cars that you're having, but maybe you'd like to feature an Austin 7. And as it happened, his mother-in-law would live fairly close to me, so he was able to visit. And we met up and we went out together in the Austin 7. We hadn't gone more than perhaps a quarter of a mile. And he said, "This is fantastic. I had no idea a car could be like this." The intimacy that you get with an old car is so very different to what you get with a much more modern car. But one of the problems with engaging the younger people is that it is so far removed from their experiences. I can remember when I bought my first Austin 7 in 1963, the car was then just over 30 years old, which is like a youngster now buying a Vauxhall Nova or something like that. And I can remember when I was starting out in my motoring life, thinking that something like a veteran car from round about 1890s, 1900 period had absolutely no interest, no relevance whatsoever. And these days, that really, I think, is how even an enthusiastic motoring youngster is going to envisage a pre-war car. It's just so beyond their comprehension. So unless we go out and meet these people and get them to experience it and not just see it static in a field, but actually hear it running, see it running, hopefully get them to have a ride in it. That's the only way we're going to get the youngsters involved. I also think that we're probably going about it the wrong way. We're saying, how can we get the young people involved? I think we ought to be talking about how can we get the middle-aged people involved, because it strikes me we seem to have lost a generation in the enthusiasm. And really it's the 40 and 50-year-olds who in turn have then got to engage their children.
I met with Matt Kibble in 2019 at the Classic Car Show at Woolerton Hall in Nottingham. He is a young owner of an Austin 7 car that he races and, with his wider family, has completely embraced the Austin 7 way of life.
When I was little, I couldn't reach the pedals, and he always said to my granddad that I wanted to drive it. And then when I was old enough, I could reach the pedals. He took me out down some country lane track thing, taught to drive it, and then I was sort of chucked in at the deep end really. It was like, right, your first trial's on this date, get in the car and you're going. So we did. And that was the end of that. It's just something about it. Everywhere you go, people look at you, and especially a lot of the older generation. Like today we've drove it here, there's been no end of people that you don't know waving at you. And it's just, I don't know, it makes you feel good because it's something that's, they were brought up with. It was like a modern car to us now as what it was to them. So to be out in it, it's just, it puts a smile on your face. It's not like driving any other car really.
Is it cool?
Yes, very cool. Massively. I'd rather drive this than my car that I drive to work every day. I mean, a lot of kids nowadays in my generation just sort of want to sit at home, play on phones and play on Xboxes. But I suppose when I was younger, every time I went to my granddad's, it was there in the garage, and I sort of chose to carry it on with life, become a mechanic, got involved in cars, and a lot of the friends and the people I hang around with are people that I went to college with to be a mechanic. So they're into cars themselves, so I try and get them involved in it, but it's not something you can just go out, buy and do it. It's not as easy as that. And I suppose if you're not helped with the fact that my granddad had it and my uncle helped me, without the knowledge and what they did, I probably won't do it myself. So, there's many of my friends as I can get involved in it. I try, bring them along to the trials, take them out for rides in it. Like I say, there was 4 of us that were at the garage at the weekend putting the fuel tank back in to get it here, and we all went out in it, took turns in it, ended up at the pub, and people at the pub just come out, like everyone wants to have a look at it, look round it. It's brilliant, it's great fun. Massively.
Everybody wants to go in it.
Yeah, that's the thing, innit? Everyone's like, let me go in it, take me out in it, let me go in it. So.
Did you pull your girlfriend in this?
No.
I think you lost the last one.
I lost the last one because of this.
Paul Lawrence is the secretary on the board of the Austin 7 Association. He runs his own Austin 7 repairs and spares business and is passionate about preserving the little car's history.
Well, I think cost does come into it to a degree. The Austin 7 has always been a cheaper car in terms of the classic car world, but we are starting to see those prices creep up a little bit now, so it is a bit more difficult, I think, for younger people to sort of break into that. And when you think about the people who now maybe are in their 60s, 70s or 80s, when they were younger, the Austin 7 was very much the go-to car. It was probably going through that period where it wasn't really worth a great deal of money. People would pick it up for next to nothing, and they sort of cut their teeth on those cars, really. And you tend not to get that so much now. My friends were getting Capris and Hillman Avengers, and they would spend every Saturday morning out there filling it with filler and spraying it over and just doing that kind of stuff. Young people are probably less mechanically minded than they used to be. And the throwaway society, I do wonder if going forward the electrification of cars, classic cars, might be something that will start to come into play. If you think about the old car movement as a whole, it's actually quite a closed shop in terms of diversity anyway. So if you look at the people that are involved, they tend to be, and I am generalising, but they will tend to be white males, middle-aged to older. That's the general dynamic. So we don't have a great deal of diversity, but is that indicative of the movement as a whole? And we actually need to be trying to be more open to more diverse communities anyway. For a number of years now, the question about getting young people involved comes up, but nothing really has been put in place in relation to that question. Great coincidence, we got involved with Liane, who was looking at that, and it's just amazing that happened at the same time as we were really looking at this as a real issue, really.
In the next episode, we're going to be talking to people around the world about how they're embracing young people in owning and being involved in the classic car community, including stories such as Steve in Brisbane, Australia, where he's actively trying to encourage classic car owners to loan their cars out to young people and to set up cruises that go around the big cities to bring the cars into the community and to help future-proof them.
Bye.